Welcome to Autocar and the launch of the 790 Duke. This is the biggest, most powerful, fastest and probably the most awesome and enjoyable KTM that KTM has launched in India to date. They've been here for 7 years now, but we've only had 125s, 200s, 250s and 390s so far. This is the 790 Duke. It falls within the Duke range of motorcycles, which means it's a naked street bike. And as you can see, the design is actually really quite familiar. This headlamp, actually, I can't tell any difference from the 390 Duke to this, and they are very similar. But if you go towards the side of the motorcycle, you're going to see that it is very much a Duke with very sharp lines, but there is a lot of difference in here. The way the tank extension flows forward, very much like a Duke. The rear subframe though, that's an aluminium unit. It's different, and the airbox is housed in there. And there are these intakes on both sides of the motorcycle that apparently are very effective in getting air to the engine. You've got an upswept exhaust out here. That heat shield is really close to this foot peg, and it's going to be good fun to see how hot this bike gets in traffic. But basically, it is a sharp looking motorcycle and it is very much a KTM in its DNA. There are a lot of new things in this motorcycle though that we haven't seen from KTMs in the past. Now what we know KTMs for is their single cylinder engines. That's all the bikes in India, and abroad in their motocross range and all, they're all single cylinder engines. KTM also is famous for V-twin engines, but this one gets a brand new parallel twin engine. I think this is the first time KTM's done a parallel twin engine. It's a 799cc, effectively 800cc parallel twin engine with an uneven firing order. It's supposed to replicate KTM's V-twin feel. If you come over here, we'll give you an idea of what it sounds like. It's gruff, it's loud, it's angry, and I think it's quite a lot of fun. Alright, so that's what the bike sounds like. Let's tell you more about the motorcycle. It is a very slim looking motorcycle. I'm going to sit on it right now, and to me, this feels almost as thin as sitting on a 390 Duke, which should be awesome out on the road. You have a full color TFT display here. If you come over, that's what greets the rider. It's a different display to the 390 Duke, but it is very rich. Let's turn the kill switch on. That's what it looks like. It is different to the 390 Duke. There's quite a bit of functionality in there, but more than the display, the bigger thing with the electronics on this bike is just how much electronic assists KTM is giving you. It starts with 4 rider modes, rain, road, sport, I believe, and track. But within that, you've got a lot of functionality. You've got cornering ABS, you've got cornering traction control. There's something KTM calls motor slip regulation, which is where this bike does have a slipper clutch, which is a manually functioning slipper clutch. But if it feels like if you've downshifted too much and the wheel is starting to hop, the engine raises the RPM slightly to smooth that effect out. Speaking of downshifts, this bike comes with a quick shifter which works both up and down, and all of this comes as standard, which makes this bike effectively the most richly equipped in terms of electronics in the segment. Now these brakes, they don't have any branding on them, they're just KTM, but they're by a Spanish company called J-Juan. J-Juan brakes is something we've experienced on the Mojo and more recently on the CF Moto motorcycles. They haven't been very impressive so far, but this is a KTM and I think these will be much nicer to use. We'll see what they're like. They're both 300mm discs at either side. Okay, now let's talk power figures. This engine makes 105 horsepower, which is actually not very good compared to the competition. The Street Triple is over 110, the GSX S750 is over 110, the Z900 is 125 horsepower. But where this bike excels is the torque. Apart from the Z900, no other bike makes as much torque as this engine, and this bike is probably the lightest in its class. It's 169 kilos dry, which is about 3 kilos more than the Street Triple S. But I suspect when it comes to wet weights with all the fluids, fuel tank full, it'll probably be on par. So, lightest bike in its class and the most torque. That should be a lot of fun. Now let's talk about price. 8.63 lakh is quite a lot of money for this motorcycle. I was hoping it would be priced at about rupees 8 lakh mark. That hasn't turned out to be the case. The bike comes in as a CKD unit, which means the kit is brought down from Mattighofen and is just assembled here. Localization is very little, probably these good old Indian engine, leg, heat guards, whatever you want to call them. That's probably the only localized part for India. Everything else comes as you would get it from Austria or in any other part of the world. That's probably a good thing, but it also means price is not as competitive as it could be. KTM has brought 100 units into India for now. These are BS4 models, so they only have till April 1, 2020 to sell them out, after which the bikes will come at BS6 spec. Now KTM says they do have plans to increase the level of localization further down the road, maybe in more than a few months. But as of now, this is what this bike is going to cost. It places it above the Japanese inline 4 motorcycles, but below the Triumph Street Triple S, below the Ducati Monster, and below the very expensive Yamaha MT-09. Well, it looks really exciting, and we're going to be riding it in the first week of October, so stay tuned.